Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me. In my series, the year 2020 Rick Miracle Report, and this is number 30. It's March 27th, 2020, and the world has turned itself upside down and is crazy. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. Insanity abounds, and it seems to be premeditated, believe it or not, by these people, the Illuminati. And the Illuminati is just one of the many names. David Icke calls them the one percenters. I call them also the Satanists, the Luciferic, high levels of the Freemasonic people, Freemasons. High levels of Rosicrucians, Golden Dawn, Knights of the Garter, Club of Rome, Bilderberger Group, Bohemian Grove, on and on and on. The Banksters, the Zionists, the Khazars, Khazarians, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. The Khazarians, they're up there from the area between Germany and Russia. They're Nordic, but they make up the bulk of the Zionist people who call themselves Jews. And apparently they've been working for 300 years, these Illuminati characters, to bring about a global world order. They brought us a lot of revolutions and world wars and small wars, and economic upheavals and terrorism and economic destruction and all kinds of mind control and satanic rituals, and that's a lot to say. So we have this coronavirus apparently ravaging the whole world, so they would have us believe. I suspect there's something not true about all of this. I don't think it is all encompassed and surrounded by the coronavirus, this pursuit of a global world order. Because weeks before the coronavirus was making headlines, RT News, Rick Sanchez, and other people on YouTube videos and alternate news websites were citing the fact that the Federal Reserve was feeding the banks $500 billion a day. Apparently even Glenn Beck and so many others before this virus catastrophe. So they were feeding the banks $500 billion a day. And President Donald Trump, in his speeches that I watch, was bragging during his election campaign speeches that the U.S. had a robust economy, better than it had ever been before, with a lot of growth and a minimal amount of unemployment. And so on one hand, you got the Federal Reserve feeding the banks $500 billion a day. And on the other hand, you got Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, saying everything is just great. The stock market's never seen such peaks. So I started this subscription late last year, a few months ago, because I wanted to find out. I kept getting these advertisements for the Epic Times, Truth and Tradition. And they were really bragging on Donald Trump, and I tried to find the truth. So this was March 12th. As coronavirus rages on, Chinese regime promotes its containment effects. With COVID-19 infections skyrocketing in countries outside China, the Chinese regime has recently ratcheted up propaganda portraying its containment measures as a model for others to follow. So these people who control our world will use propaganda, deception, lies to continue their mode of operation, which, as we have seen for the past 20 years, is endless wars and economic destruction. And beyond that, World War I, World War II, for the past 100 years. And then even before that, with the French Revolution and the British Revolution and the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution, untold millions of people killed, probably 1 billion in the past 300 years. So these people, by these symbols, that's on the back of the dollar bill, by the way, that's right, same thing on the back of the dollar bill that's behind me, the Freemasonic symbols. Apparently, according to my research, this column here represents the moon. There's the moon, and that would be Satan. And this column here represents the sun, and that would be Lucifer. So apparently 2 different kind of demon deities. And then, of course, you have the serpent here, and the eye, and the sun's rays. So apparently these people are the people behind this pursuit of a global world order for 300 years or more. They've been doing evil things. But 300 years ago, there was a focused agenda on a global world order. So they had to take over countries and destroy governments and whole regions like the Prussian Empire, which now most people think of Germany. But the Prussian Empire was a huge amount of countries in Western Europe, not including the Britain, and from Austria to Hungary, Romania, Germany, even Poland and other countries, Prussia. So that had to be destroyed. Then there was Turkey and Greece and the Ottoman Empire controlling all of the Middle East. So that had to be destroyed. Then there was the hostile takeover of all of China, a whole continent almost. And so they had to have a revolution, and those leaders were destroyed. And then after World War I, they went into Russia, espionage with mercenaries, and had the Russian Revolution, because that power structure had to be destroyed. Here in the United States in 1860 to 1863, we had the war between the North and the South, and it was the same people behind that. The Freemasons out of France, with some people siding with the Freemasons and Illuminati out of Britain, the North and the South fighting each other. We had to be taken down and destroyed. And each time they did these revolutions and wars and economic destructions, they gained more control and more power over everything. That's why they do it. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. If you create a problem, then you can supply the solution. And a lot of people talk about that. So I'm reading these headlines on these Epoch Times newspapers that I subscribe to, so I could kind of try to figure out in my mind, should this paper be trusted? And I'm seeing the headlines: U.S. coronavirus fatality rate is overestimated, experts say. So the number of confirmed cases doesn't tell the whole story, as mild cases and untested and recovered patients aren't fully counted. So I've been doing some homework. I asked myself, coronavirus 19. The only reason they call it 19 is this particular flu, this version of it was discovered, of course, in December or November during the winter a few months ago, when everybody gets the flu. And apparently it was causing a lot of severity in the flu. And I don't know if you've ever had the flu, but I thought I was going to die a couple times in my life so far when I got the flu. And throughout history, when they did get these strains of flu like SARS or MERS or whatever, they killed 20, 40, 80, 90,000 people. But they didn't quarantine a whole planet because of that. And this flu isn't that bad compared to those flus. Matter of fact, there's some strange anomalies to this flu. I'll get to that. So I'm going to go over these Epoch Times paper for a minute. Small businesses in Midwest hurting, worried about the unknown. Business owners' staff are trying to stay positive as shutdown related to the CCP virus hits their bottom line. Think about this. I just went to the garden center and to get some bags of soil for my garden and some fertilizer. And the whole garden center, every year I go there, and people standing in line, and it's that time of year. You've been to a garden center. But they wouldn't let anybody inside, and they had a couple young men outside doing curb service. You could speak from your car, tell them what you wanted, they would go get it, bring it to the curb and take your card, and they wore gloves and sanitizer stuff. So there really wasn't any significant business. I bought $5 bags of dirt, 6 of them, $30, and there were some other customers, but nothing like the volume they normally do. And in where I live, and I've checked with friends in Florida and New York and other places, the restaurants are all shut down, the gymnasiums are shut down, and even many other stores or businesses are shut down. And I know for a fact most of these businesses, I've been a business consultant for 30 years, they can't take being at a business for a couple months or 3 months or 4. They'll go broke. Everybody knows that. Most of these businesses are living from month to month, week to week. The people are with their salaries and pay. So from California to North Carolina to Florida, New York, and I'm sure all over the world, 50% of the businesses across this country will probably close their doors forever. And let's not forget, the baby boomers who were born after World War II, from 1946 to 56 and 66, where parents had 5 and 6 and 7, 8 kids. If you do the math between after World War II and 20 years of this baby boomer population, the United States went from 100 million to 300 million people in that 20-year period, because the economy was robust after World War II, and people were having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 kids. And anyways, during the hippie age in the 60s, apparently the powers that be, these guys wanted to nip that in the bud, and they brought about the hippie age. In Europe, they called it festivals. They introduced heroin and drugs into American society, and the satanic rock and roll albums. I'm not making it up. Look at the cover of Dark Side of the Moon, and a lot of those satanic rock and roll albums, if you play them backwards, you can hear satanic words. And I'm not saying all rock and roll is evil, but the mind controllers and planners used all of that free love to stop the population growth. But the bottom line is, if you take the 20 years after World War II and into the 60s, and when that stopped, but you take those people, their age, and you add 60 years, 70 years, you're going to come up with today. So 50% or more of America that was born back then when there was 100 million people, and then after 20 years there was 300 million people, and you come to today, those 200 million people, those that are still alive, are 70 and 80 and 90 years old, and a lot of them are business owners. So we can say confidently 100 million of those men and women at their age with that financial situation will never open their doors again if this thing continues for a couple months or a half a year or longer. And I think it's intentional. So small businesses across this country, small businesses provide jobs, restaurants, motels, garden centers, gymnasiums, hair salons. It goes on and on and on. And again, I believe there's some intention to this, and they're using this virus out of China with some weird strings attached to it, some anomalies to it I mentioned earlier, which I will mention in this video. And here's one, Epic Times. The House bill aims to strengthen the medical supply chain amid coronavirus. So the government says they need to stimulate the economy. What economy? It certainly isn't all of the small businesses. And the House just passed the $2 trillion stimulus package. And apparently the government is saying they're going to give we citizens $1,200 each if you make $70,000 or less. And apparently, according to what I was reading, I don't know if it's true, you don't have to do anything. It's going to come in the mail like your IRS check. They're going to look at your taxes you filed this year or the ones last year, if you haven't filed yet, and automatically send you the $1,200. If you're filing as a couple, you'll get $2,400, and I believe an extra $600 per child. So this one-time shot, $1,200 for somebody that's single and making less than 70 grand, one-time shot. So anyways, I did the math and totaled it up, and it's $1 billion, maybe 1.2. Then you add the kids. Okay, so it comes out to $2 billion. The stimulus package was $2 trillion. So they're going to give we the people $2 billion. You're going to get a $1,200 check. They passed the stimulus package for $2 trillion. Now, how many billions in a trillion? There's 1,000 billions in a trillion. So 2,000 billion minus the 2 billion for the people is 1,998 billion for whatever they're going to do. And I don't believe it's for hand sanitizers or ventilators or face masks, etc. They're invoking the War Powers Act. That means the government can control all industries as if we're in World War III. It seems to me, with these guys doing what they've done in the past 300 years, apparently, unbeknownst to most of us, it seems we're in World War III. And they call it a war. A wartime president, one of President Donald Trump's previous employees was talking on one of the YouTube videos today. So apparently these people here are also behind the cartels, the drugs, the banksters, and so much more evil things. But apparently they're pushing huge amounts of meth and fentanyl into the U.S. So these evil people, even during these times, are pushing huge amounts. It's according to this newspaper. Arizona sheriff says cartels create demand by flooding communities with free or cheap drugs to get people addicted. So I said a few moments ago, after World War II and the next 20 years of the population growth, the powers that be wanted to clamp down on that. They even had a book published by the Club of Rome called The Population Bomb, and another one by Mr. and Mrs. Meadows, Overpopulation, Population Growth, and so many more. And even during the Bohemian Grove or the Bilderberger groups meetings, some of the information came out in the public, and they were talking about coming up with different methods of reducing the population, that the population was the greatest threat to the world today. So think about that. So I was looking at some of these reports online. Got a whole fistful. So let me just tell you in a snapshot what I have figured out. Apparently, in China, however you say that city, Wuhan, was the first city to have fully installed and turned on 5G. So everybody in that huge city, it's like a city like New York City, big city. Orlando, Florida, big city. Miami, big city, you get it. LA, big city. Wuhan. So it was supposed to be a model for this completely computer-controlled system. Cell phones, Wi-Fi, cameras, cars even probably learning how to drive themselves, everything, all an electromagnetic bath. Apparently, as one might believe, that that kind of radiation is not good for humans. So it causes something like a flu syndrome. It's here. You can look up this document and get all of the pages. So it says here they have numerous weapons working in concert with each other. So I've been photographing and videoing and publishing videos on the dumping of stuff in the sky. That's what I can call it, dumping of stuff. We don't know what they dumped. There's been some studies and some reports of bromium, strontium, aluminum byproducts, coal ash. A lot of reports about other kinds of toxins and miniature electronic components, miniature stuff that we breathe in, that they can be, I guess, tuned into, affected by the 5G radiation and the digital signals. They call it audiograms. So they do a blast of a radio wave, and it has on it a signal, like when you tune into AM, FM radio, that's tuned into the high frequency of your brain and can make you think words or thoughts. Not only that, it can alter your blood and the water in your body and your DNA. It can make you agitated, aggravated, panicky, and it can calm you down and make you happy depending on the frequency, just like our FM, AM radio dial. So you have the component of all this research with the radio and microwave transmissions. You have the dumping of all that stuff in the sky with aluminum, metal products, and biological products, according to research that I've done. So you have a combination of that, and then you have the intentional mind control messages, propaganda in the news, on the radio, in the newspapers, on the billboards, in the school system. We've all heard about the children being shown videos on adult sex, even alternate sex, the Rainbow Coalition. And the cartoons, I've seen some stuff on the cartoons that I wouldn't want my children watching and learning. So the cartoons, the TV programming, Spartacus, Lucifer, Gotham, I can name them for again and again and again. And the Man in the High Castle recently, playing on the Jewish victims and the aggressive Nazis. And then the Headhunter show, when they're looking for Nazi officers or soldiers to prosecute them. I forget the name of that show. So the TV programming, the movies, the music, rock and roll, the albums, Dark Side of the Moon, and a lot of it's, to most of us, is innocent, but it appears to have had a purpose to create something called the hippie age. In Europe, they called it festivals, to stop the 300 million people that came from 100 million people with the population bomb from World War I for about 20 years. So they moved into the hippie age where people started having 1 or 2 children, or a lot of people having no children. But my most important point is, if you take that 20-year period and you add 60 or 70 years to it, when people would get old and retire, you come to today. All those people, those 200 million people, those that are left alive today, let's call it 150 million. Let's assume 50 million of them have already died. That's how serious this is. So you have 150 million elderly people. And a lot of them are business owners and had some money or whatever. And apparently, according to the news, these people are the ones most susceptible to this viruses. And apparently it's a flu virus, and there are numerous flu viruses out there, some worse than others, and some like SARS or MERS, 20,000, 90,000, and AIDS. They didn't quarantine the planet for AIDS, so why are they quarantining this virus, which has a minuscule amount of deaths so far? But this situation is a little different, according to this stuff. Not only are we dealing with a flu virus, but we're dealing with the microwave transmission radiations, even fine-tuning to affect our DNA and cause our blood cells in our bodies to emit toxins because they're getting shaken up by the vibrations. That's how your food cooks in a microwave oven. It shakes up the water molecules and it cooks the food. So with all those radio transmissions, it's shaking up our molecules and DNA and water in our bodies. And apparently they're emitting some kind of sludge or toxin, which is why we have flus in the winter anyways, because the cold weather chills things down and the blood cells emit a little toxin and make you ill and give you the flu. So it gets exacerbated by the radio transmissions and the toxins in the beverages and the food that we eat. So you're under attack by what they dump into the air, the heavy metals. Those heavy metals are inside of me and you, and these other biological things they have dumped. We're being radiated with microwave and controlled radio frequencies and signals that alter our health. And of course you have the average flu, where apparently in 2017 the federal government removed a law that prohibited experimenting with these flu viruses, making them biological weapons. So they gave the big corporations and laboratories permission to start experimenting with these flu viruses again in 2017. So do the math: 2018, 2019, 2000, 2020, and then Wahoo, the name of that city, Wuhan, had just turned on the 5G for the whole city, the first test case, the model for the world, and they had this epidemic of a flu-like syndrome radiated with the frequencies, tied in with the flu, tied in with all the chemicals and biologicals dumped into the air, tied in with the our immune system under attack from the toxins in the foods and the drinks and the sodas and aspartame and everything else, non-organic GMOs. You know, it's almost like if you took a body, let's say my body, and you had 2 or 3 guys around me just taking big sticks or bats and beating me up all over my body, I would probably be all bruised and ill and bleeding and in pretty bad shape if that happened. And so I equate that to the situation of people's health today with the bombardment of the stuff from the sky. I know I'm repeating myself. The dump stuff you can look up. You don't know what it is. It's toxins of metal products, bacteria, biologicals, and the radio transmitters and microwave, which everybody knows it's dangerous to stick your hand or a head in a microwave oven. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put a fork in there. Why would you put heavy metals into the air that we breathe in, that gets in our water, in our food? So we have a high level of unnatural heavy metals in our bodies. And then you have all these enhanced microwave transmission signals. So that's what this article talks about. The COVID bioweapon, the 5G energy weapon, the chemtrail chemical weapon, the flu vaccine hybrid. So they altered these vaccines to come up with the specific one that does a specific thing. People get the flu, but the people with underlying conditions, and if you watch the news, they say that everywhere. That means those 200 million people born after World War II, who now are 70, 80 years old, 90 years old, they're most susceptible to this. And it's all fully integrated into a quaternary weapon system to depopulate and lock down planet Earth. I kid you not. Please go look it up. And you can find this at the top there. The SOTN : alternate news, analysis, and commentary. Revealing the true state of the nation. Quaternary weapon system activated before each coronavirus cluster explosion. March 25, 2020. So 2 days ago, I watch videos every day. I read the newspapers. I do continue to read books and do my research. I know for a fact that, and I have the books, I've made videos on them in my series, Freemasonry and Satanism, on the limits to growth by Mr. and Mrs. Meadows, and the population bomb by the Club of Rome, and the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, all these materials on sustainability, global warming, global cooling, climate change, terrorism, economic destructions, and so much more. All this propaganda promoting this rainbow coalition, new philosophy, saying that the old religions and the old teachings are no longer useful anymore. The whole world needs to change. And back there in the 1960s, when they wrote all those books by overpopulation and meetings between Bill Gates and many other people, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and all of that, they all agreed that overpopulation was the #1 problem on the planet. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that a combination of these things, of the genetically modified foods with no nutrients in them, these packaged products people buy, the virus bioweapon, the 5G energy weapon, the chemtrail weapon, the flu vaccine hybrid weapon created in a lab, it's to depopulate. The WHO, the UN Agenda 2130 depopulation plan via 5G 60 gigahertz millimeter waves and toxin coronavirus vaccine injections. So my 30 minutes are up. So the bottom line is, let's say you didn't have the flu. You didn't catch a regular flu this year. But you were surrounded by all of these microwaves. And you have all these chemicals dumped from the sky dumping of stuff that you can look up in the sky and see them doing it. You can take a picture or video. There's plenty of information. Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org, Deborah Travers, stopthecrime.net. Many, many websites on this stuff saying the same thing. That those attacks on us, not a flu, but those microwave transmissions and those chemicals and those toxins cause flu-like symptoms, especially dangerous to elderly people or people with underlying conditions. So I was watching the sky today. Today is March 27th. I took some videos. They were spraying us like crazy today. I can look out my window right here and see all that white stuff dumped into the sky. And I'm thinking to myself, man, what recipe, what is it in that concoction of stuff that they're dumping out, coming down to Earth? Would they cause this microwave transmission, 5G, 4G combination, heavy metals and biological weapons? With that concoction coming down to Earth and me breathing it in, you breathing it in, could it all create a more insane situation where everybody has these flu-like symptoms, but they don't have the flu? They've been microwaved and poisoned. And we all are under stress which reduces our immune system, so we're more susceptible to it. And they want everybody to just sit around for weeks and months on end, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist or Sherlock Holmes to realize that all these people with no money in the big cities, and probably in rural areas, there'll be people with no money, no food, who will go out there like Mad Max and maybe start stealing and killing and robbing, and particularly in the cities, as we've all seen again and again and again. It just seems to be a recipe for a huge disaster. Again, I believe created. They were feeding the banks $500 billion a day prior to this whole thing. And President Donald Trump said the economy was better than it ever has been for his presidential campaign. They just passed a $2 trillion stimulus package 14 days after this whole thing went crazy on Friday the 13th. And they're going to give the people $2 billion, and they're going to keep $1,998 billion. And they just passed the War Powers Act, which gave the president and the government control over the corporations to have them manufacture and produce what they want them to. And I keep thinking to myself, has World War III started and they just haven't told us? Is this just another version of a world war? Is this all that intentional, and getting everybody to stay home and not gather in groups and talk amongst themselves, where people might start alarming each other? And then again, if I'm right, how dangerous is it for people who look up this stuff and read it? There's a whole lot of pages here. I got a whole fistful. I have to make another video to continue this conversation. And that's what this video is, a conversation. I'm not a big promoter or fan of fear, and I don't think anybody should have fear. If it's time to go and God calls us, we're out of here. And this is only a temporary reality anyways. The spirit world is the real reality. And there's plenty of books on it. I've gone over the material. I'll go over it again. Out-of-body experiences, after-death experiences, reincarnation. For some reason, this little visit to Earth, where you and I were born here, and we're here for anywhere from hours, days, weeks, months, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. When we leave, we go back to the spirit world. So it doesn't matter what happens to you. It matters on how you react to what happens to you. Fear is unnecessary. Revenge is unnecessary. Murdering people, threatening people is unnecessary. Matter of fact, it's looked upon harshly when you get judged in the spirit world when you return. So just remember, it does matter what you do, and to have a loving heart and pray for people, all people, and do the right thing right up into the moment, maybe when you're gasping for breath and you're dying because of the radiation and the poisoning and the toxins and the lab-created vaccines, flus, and lab-created vaccines that apparently they're supposed to be going to force upon all the citizens, that are supposed to have some detrimental ingredients in those things. That's another whole conversation. So there's no need for fear. You should hopefully stock up on a little food and water for a couple months, a couple $100, cans of food, water. Plan on hunkering down and watching this thing unfold like watching a Hunger Games movie, because that's what it is. You know where it's going to end when you have a couple 100 million people just in the United States alone, and apparently the world, Italy, everywhere. You know where it's going to end, and when people do revolt, I believe the powers that be, the governments of the world, are prepared for that event. when the people rise up and say, enough is enough, we're not going to take it, and sit at home and not work and not eat and not food. And I believe they're armed and ready for that event when the people rise up. And there's no winning against them. They have the weapons. They have the technologies. They know what we're saying. They know what we're thinking. They know what we do. They know where we go. They know everything. So the only thing that I think is logical is to watch it like a movie, talk to God a lot, and keep love in your heart, and just pray for a good ending to this whole situation. But I've been watching and praying and paying attention, and it doesn't look like it's going to be abated. It doesn't look like they're going to turn around and end this siege on the world. It looks like this could be the hit that we've all been anticipating, that's been prophesized. They told us it was coming. They've been planning on it. People have been making videos, the global world order, cashless society. They told us. Everybody, not too many people can deny they didn't know and they weren't told, or they tell their friends and other people, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, it's not a conspiracy theorist theory anymore. It's a fact. And it's in these newspapers. It's in these documents. It's in what we see in the sky. It's what we know is in the food, why people are going organic and checking the ingredients on the back of everything they eat, because it is destroying our immune system. Well, I exceeded my 30 minutes. I apologize. Thank you for watching this video. And again, this is not about fear. This is not about hate. Maybe if you put a smile on your face and love in your heart and help as best you can, it may bode well for you when you do pass back into the spiritual realm. They get a attaboy and you did a good job, versus killing and stealing for a morsel of food and then winding up in the spiritual realm before judgment. And St. Peter's going, well, why did you kill those people? I don't think you're going to be going to heaven. You're going to go someplace else. And all this is in the Bible. I'm not making it up. It just makes sense. If this is all going to unfold and we can't do anything about it, we may look, listen, and learn. And again, no fear and no hate, no targeting people, no judgmental thoughts. Just love out there and prepare a little bit, stay at home, work in the garden, read a book, but don't participate in the aggression. Hugely advise that people do not participate. I believe we're being baited. I believe they're throwing out the hook and they're trying to reel us in. We can't fall for that. If we don't react to what they're doing, they can't do what they want to do, and that's depopulate the people. They may be able to continue to dump stuff in the sky and crank up the high-frequency microwave transmissions and just start killing all the people. But if in the spirit world, God's world, God is paying attention. And if they do that and you die and you don't act crazy and insane and you understand what's going on, it's the evil forces in the world doing this, and you realize that this isn't your real world anyways, it's a whole lot easier to digest that and to relax. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Rick Miracle reporting.